Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the I-5 Corridors Traffic Report. Tyson Alger here, and no Justin Myers this week, but we do have a replacement. We have Andrew Greif. He's zooming in from Los Angeles, where, Andrew, I think it's been 4 days. Are you back on American time zones yet after your 3 weeks in Milan?
Yeah, I get adjust to jet lag pretty quickly, I found. So like it hasn't been an issue coming back onto Pacific time, but definitely there's like always a day, there's like a half day where I was kind of like just feeling like it's like 4 o'clock and I was like, I think I'm ready for bed. That was both going there and coming back. But other than that, it's been pretty good. It's weird though, because it's 90 degrees
Okay.
today in LA, and it wasn't exactly cold in Milan. It was like one day it was 60, which you're like, I'm at the Winter Olympics. It's 60 degrees. But it was obviously cold. Like I was reminded there were seasons there, and there are not seasons here.
Okay, so to get some quick particulars out of the way for people who are not longtime listeners of the podcast, Andrew and I used to work together at the Oregonian. We covered the Ducks. He has since worked for the LA Times, NBC News. He's written a book, and over the last couple weeks, he was one of NBC News's Olympics correspondents. Covering just about everything under the sun at the Olympics. But my first question to you centers around that 60-degree day, and you've covered a Summer Olympics before, and I don't imagine there's like a whole lot of like having to get yourself into the mindset of it's the Summer Olympics. But like with winter, it does seem like there's a little bit of like you have to suspend your disbelief sometimes of where like take me into like what it feels like outside of like actually like the specific events that you're covering. Like does it feel like in a big city like Milan, did it like feel like that everyone's in the Olympics, like just kind of give me like what an average day is like there?
Well, I think that the best way to frame is the way I thought about it a lot was the contrast between the first Olympics I covered in Paris and this one, where in Paris you just couldn't walk anywhere without feeling the Olympics because there were, the five rings on the Eiffel Tower for one, and there were just venues everywhere around the city because there were so many more sports in the Summer Olympics, and so many of those are, hosted within the city itself. So it was like a much more immersive experience in Paris, where you could, walk probably the equivalent of a three-quarters of a mile, and you might hit four different sports or four or five different venues. That was pretty common. Winter Olympics are just a smaller operation, right? There were four sports in Milan itself, and then I think there were 12 spread out between 3 and like 6 hours away from Milan. So we could not. It was just the logistics were too difficult to actually get transportation up to those mountain cities. I would have loved to have gone to Cortina, to Livigno, and seen some of the skiing and snowboarding and even curling, but it just wasn't. Those towns are too small. So like you could take a train up. I knew a lot of people from NBC who went up there for the day, but then they had to come back because there were just no hotel rooms. There's nowhere to stay. So that was kind of the chief problem. So within like where I stayed in Milan was very close to the city center, like around the Duomo area, the giant cathedral that can host 40,000 people, which I didn't realize till walking through it. But so we were right in the center of the city, and there just weren't a whole lot of Olympic like reminders. There was kind of five rings that you could take pictures next to, but it was kind of tucked behind this kind of elaborate, really amazing mall called the Galleria, where like the original Prada and Gucci stores are, et cetera, et cetera.
I know.
There's no five rings on the Duomo. The NBC had a kind of a big TV tower in the Duomo Square where they shot the Today Show and whatnot. So you knew there, and there was a mega store there for merch. So you knew there was something happening that was different, but it didn't quite feel the same as Paris. And I think
Right.
that's maybe more of a Winter Olympics thing, because I heard people say, well, in Turin it was sort of like this too in 2006. Just the beast of it is you have to have mountain sports,
Yeah.
and big cities are generally not near mountains. And so that led to a big discussion about, Salt Lake City again feels like a perfect host because Park City is really a half-hour drive
Yeah.
away, and people talking about, like, I think Stockholm is like a really good venue for that too. So yeah, it was once you were in the venues, it was really, really fun. But I wouldn't say that kind of walking around the city, you immediately were hit over the head every day with the Olympics are here.
So one of the reasons that I've always wanted to cover the Olympics and has been just kind of like you've covered a beat for the majority of your career, and covering a beat is fantastic because you get to learn about people to a depth that you maybe don't get when you're on a general assignment beat. But the Olympics has always been alluring to me because it just kind of seems like you wake up and it's like, okay, you're assigned to go cover this random thing and throw your fastball at it, and the next day it's something else. Like what went into kind of like planning your guys' coverage? I know you were there as part of a team, but like how did you know what you were going to be covering and following, and just kind of how much planning went into just kind of like your guys' day to day?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it was kind of we mostly stuck to a lot of what was happening in Milan because NBC News had correspondents all over. You know, it's a giant operation, obviously, and so they were correspondents in the mountains towns. So like we would work with them on certain stories, like when Lindsey Vonn crashed, for example. You know, the correspondent who was in Cortina was amazing about getting anecdotes about what was happening and quotes and working together to co-byline that story. That really was a co-byline, and so some of those things that you feel like you don't have to be totally studied up on just because other people are in that place. I think that in general, the way I approached like the sports I went to a lot, which were hockey, obviously long track speed skating, short track speed skating, figure skating was. I think most people, at least my point of view, is most people remember the Olympics for the human stories, and maybe not so much like these sports specific how they won or how they lost kind of angles. So going into it, looking for how do we kind of generalize this instead of going super deep into the weeds, how do we make this person's story more accessible? So like I wrote about Ohio State women's hockey and how they had I think 12 players or alumni or current players who were participating in the women's hockey tournament. And the story was kind of like, oh, you think Ohio State is like a football powerhouse. Right. It turns out they're also powering like the women's hockey tournament. So that was something that you don't need to know hockey to know that. And I didn't need to know hockey, but it's kind of like, oh, hopefully making people think different. Or like the first person drones. That was a huge hit.
I love that story. And this is why I'm like, I need to cover Olympics, because it was like the second or third day of it. I was like, I know somebody's going to write a story on these and it's going to be great. And it's just,
yeah. and two of your former colleagues and friends did. Lindsay Schnell, the Athletic, also got that assignment. And I heard her question being asked on one of these press conferences. So I was like, man, Lindsay's writing the story. I'm going to have to. So it was fun to just kind of get thrown into the deep end on that stuff. And that's where NBC was amazing to work for again, because there were already people who were doing that story for some of the TV side. And so I got to see a lot of their footage and get a lot of their interviews. Oh, they said, we already interviewed a pilot today at speed skating. I was like, amazing. And they sent me the quotes. So there's a lot of access that can be had from just the giant operation that NBC was. So that made that story, like the news gathering, not all on me, which was helped me turn it around fairly quickly.
So you got the byline on some pretty high profile events from these Olympics. There was both the gold medal hockey games. You had a really great one-on-one with Michaela Schifrin, but it also, just knowing you and also following you a little bit on Instagram, am I wrong in thinking that the short track speed skating was this thing that you're taking back with you back to the States?
Oh yeah, it's so fun, and I know that that's such a every 4-year type of statement. Like, whoa, look at this sport, and if you enjoyed that sport, you're like, yeah, where have you been? I totally understand that as someone who comes from a track background where that same complaint is like, oh, you like this every 4 years? Let me introduce you to it in the intervening years too. But short track, I know people sometimes. I've realized now that there's a big debate between long track is that the more pure speed skating because it's not about chance and falling and crashing, it's about speed and skill.
Is it kind of like athleticism
it's a time trial
versus sport, if you will? Because short track seems like it has way more strategy and kind of management to it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, like, I think there's merits for both sides of that argument. I don't want to find myself on the wrong end of like speed skating Twitter, but I do feel as though I do feel like short track is just a rush, like a visceral
Yeah.
rush where you see someone spin out and they take out like two skaters or three skaters, and you're just like, whoa, and they hit the pads hard, and and then you realize, of course, these people are moving that fast on blades, and there was a really unfortunate crash
I
where
saw
someone
that.
got nearly punctured with it in the face, and that really hits home of like, whoa, okay, this isn't just like pure spectacle. So, yeah, short track. I
Those
I came home feeling like, how is this not a major thing in America?
those like first like couple laps as they're kind of like feeling each other out and like kind of establishing like when they're going to push on TV, it looks like, and I as a hockey player, I know they're not going slow during that, but on TV, it just kind of looks like they're just kind of like walking in the style that people walk on walking sidewalks at the airport, just kind of moseying a little bit, and then somebody just kind of goes like one like how fast and or slow are they going during that kind of like warm up thing, and then like is it just it seems like that's like a sport that the crowd is perfect for, just kind of like it's not too long, it's there's crashes, like yeah, I would like to see more of that here.
Yeah, and the relay is the short track relay is an amazing spectacle too, because you can pass the baton, quote unquote. It's just a push, a two-handed push on your teammates behind. The original tush push, like that can happen at any time. So like Team A can choose to pass or make its exchange like 2 laps in. Team B might do it 3 laps. So you have people
Yeah.
just switching roles at any given time, and there's strategy about when they sort of make this breakaway. It felt a little bit like F1 in a way, like when are you going to make your pit stop, like especially the last one, the last exchange, like someone might make it 3 laps out if you're strongest skater, or maybe two, and a lot of strategy that goes into it. So just a really really fun sport that I like. I want to find ways to watch that in the next 4 years.
Like and that one looks fun. Like long track doesn't look fun to me. Like long track looks like just like a grind that burn. Like whoever can take the most torture is going to win. Like short. I don't know. That might just be my preference, but
Yeah, I think that like long track felt like a time trial. It's
yeah,
you and another skater, and you each go through rounds, and there's multiple pairs. In some cases, like 15 pairs of skaters, and at the end of it, they stack up the times, and that's it. The short track felt like a demolition derby, and it's just I really like them both. But short track, there's just like a visceral thing of like you just do not know when someone's gonna, that tiny angle that they're skating on is gonna blow everything up.
can you give our listeners a description of what that hockey arena was like and how it wasn't quite maybe what it appeared like on television?
So I went to the women's game, and I did the women's gold medal game. I did not go to the men's gold medal game, but largely because we couldn't get a ticket for it. That was the only athletic event that you needed a ticket because the demand was so high for like the media seating. But for the women's game, it was amazing because even though the U.S. had obviously crushed Canada, I think 5-0, 9 days earlier, and was the most dominant team in that tournament to that point, the arena was still majority Canadian fans because you could tell they were just wearing these bright red sweaters. So it was weird. It was like the U.S. came into that and should have had all the momentum in the world, but on that ice, like to start out, it just felt like, whoa, this is a Canada game, and my untrained eye for hockey felt like the U.S. was just playing a little tight and feeling it out, and like they had crushed teams in the second period multiple times where they just score like 5 goals in
Yeah.
4 minutes, and that wasn't happening. And it was interesting to talk to the players afterward, and I sort of like, when did you feel like things were turning? And they all said, oh, the second period, like we were starting to build shifts and we were starting to really chip away, but it wasn't showing up. And so for me, that did not come across that they were making little bits of momentum or progress, but they really felt like they were. And And then with 2 minutes left, when Hillary Knight redirects that
Yeah,
shot,
that was so great, man.
just I mean, that was a wild moment for me too, because she was tied for the U.S. all-time goal record for the Olympics, and she had been sitting on that for like a week, I want to say, and she hadn't scored.
So
So there was
you're prepping storyline wise. You're like, okay, I'm ready.
well,
She's
that
got
was
to
a
get this
pre-write.
goal. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a pre-write just to like, hey, when that happens, it's going to be news, but it hadn't happened for a while. And then we also had a live vlog to kind of update, and then of course, when she scores, it's now 1-1 with 2 minutes left in regulation. So, like, not my whole, but most of my gamer is changed. And so I'm like doing three things at once. Like, okay, blog, pre-write, get that out, boom, update that. Now, wrap my head around how my game story has changed. And I was actually quite glad that went to extra time, because it gave me like 18 minutes of intermission to really rework and just kind of. So I was actually really happy with how that story turned out, but it was the needs of modern media in that moment required that I do three things at once, and it was kind of a. People don't want to hear this, but there can be an adrenaline rush on deadline. Like, I love writing on deadline. Like, gamers about like big games on deadline, and so that was like. I left that arena that night just like kind of buzzing, not about because the U.S. won, but just because, like, what an insane game to say you watched in person, and what a like great story it became. So yeah, it was a good night.
The hockey kind of helps and hurts from like the deadline writing perspective, because like you do get that Zam break between third period and overtime, but then like good luck in overtime. Like I covered the Timbers opener last Saturday, and they were up 1-0, then they were down 2-1, then it was tied, and they ended up like tying it like in the late 80s or so, and that just sucks. Like it's one of those things where like it made my story better, and it was entertaining for the fans, but like I think there would at some point be a great book written on just excerpts of like the really great passages writers have written that never saw the light of day just because of like a late goal or tie or overtime or something.
Right. And I felt like, just like you've done this so many times, on game stories, like, on those big games, you kind of want it more. It's not just about the game.
Yeah.
And so I'd been able to spend a lot of time. I think I watched like 4, maybe 5 of U.S. women's games up to that point. So I've been in the mix zone a lot with the players and the coach, and just sort of gotten a bunch of stuff, and I tried to work that into the story to kind of explain the bigger picture. And I feel like that helps that type of story too. There's actually a story I wish I would have had more time to write, but like one of the players was like a team DJ, and which on the face of it you're like, well, that's kind of silly, but it turns out there was like a very like almost like a elaborate process to like select the DJ. This was like 2 years ago, and so but the Olympics are so busy where if you're a beat writer, you'll probably have 2 or 3 practices to pick up thread. The Olympics, like, I tried to get as much as I could in the mix zone on that one night. I think it was after the semi, or maybe the quarterfinal, and then the next day I'm at speed skating, or the next night I'm at. So it's just harder to
do you
that
think
stuff.
that's actually good for you in the long run? Because I can still be the way of like you write a story and then like you kind of hang on it for like way too long, and like I feel like with that you just kind of have to like turn and burn, like it's on to the next thing. Like that's probably healthy, right?
Yeah, it's kind of nice at the end of each Olympic day. You kind of look at the next day's schedule. At least this is how somewhat we did it, and just sort of say, okay, like what do things interesting tomorrow? Like, what are the big storylines? And so there is sort of that news of the day attitude you have to have that I really liked about covering. The same with the Paris games too. When I was doing it freelance, was like, how am I? What's the news? What are the features I'm working on? Like, you really have to make the most of each day, and it's kind of like it's its own level of like fun where it's a puzzle.
So considering you guys were all working there for 2-3 weeks, it's long ass days. Like you finally get to the end of this tournament. You have your flights booked home. The U.S. gold medal men's games happening. Then just the shitstorm that followed with what happened in the locker room afterwards. Like without giving an opinion on the actual story, like how burnt out were all the reporters there of like, we thought we were done and now like this is just turned into like the typical American politics story.
It's a story that kind of the after the fallout, I suppose you could call it. That's something that we didn't deal with necessarily. At least my small team that I'm part of. So it's not something that fell into our lap. But I think that there's just when you cover news, it's just it doesn't phase you because it's just there's something tomorrow. So it's like grist for the mill. So I don't think that it was probably for those who did, it's sort of like, oh, now we thought we were done with the Olympics, because that's just the nature of news. Like you just get used to, okay, something happened, you got to wrap your arms around it in this moment and go.
We had like 30 minutes, Andrew. Like we had 30 minutes of everyone being on the same page and like happy with one thing at the same time, and then it just got modern day. But I won't go too much more into that. Best interview you had out there? I mean, just like most memorable, like, or just like an athlete that you'll kind of remember when you look back on this.
I didn't even interview her because one of my colleagues, Rohan at Carney, he did a lot of figure skating. But almost hearing like secondhand about his interview with Elisa Liu, she sounded amazing. So like I didn't even interview her, but I was jealous that he got to, because just the way she was, obviously an amazing moment for her, but the way she could see it in like a bigger picture of her life and her career, like that sounded amazing, and I was jealous that I missed out on that, because it just seemed like I think when you're in that moment, you win gold. So many athletes they can't speak to the moment because it's so overwhelming, and understandably so. And I think that she's one of those, because she had retired briefly and sort of come back on her own terms, as Rohan wrote in the story. I think she was able to sort of see the bigger picture immediately in that moment, be like, this is, and really articulate that and what it meant to her. I really like talking to Joy Dunn of U.S. Hockey. She goes to Ohio State. She was just always like down to talk. Like when talking to her about, one of her college teammates played for Sweden, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we've been talking about playing Sweden for months. Like we can't wait to play each other." It was a person who, it was their first time at the Olympics. You could tell was extremely excited to be there, and I think sometimes the media obligations wear athletes down, and like you could tell that Joy just like loved doing it. Like I got a video of her after the gold medal game. She showed me her gold medal, and you could just tell she was on cloud nine. I'd only been around her for like 2.5 weeks, and even then maybe only 4 or 5 interactions, but just really pleasant. Really enjoyed kind of talking to her. Who else? I mean, some of them were just so quick that it's hard to develop like a much of a rapport, because they're doing 8 interviews with local TV stations and NBC affiliates, and so I think when you're used to that beat camaraderie, not camaraderie, but just the chemistry and the rapport you have with people you cover, it's different when it's very just boom, in and out. But
are you guys?
I would say in general, the women's hockey team was like really good, great to be around. They were awesome to deal with.
Are you guys reading other people's stories when you're out there? Just because I'm assuming that like you write something on one thing and there's probably 100 people writing similar things, or what? Like how competitive is it out there?
Oh yeah, I mean, I just like to see what other people are working on. What kind of like almost like how did they pull that off? There were a lot of people who were able to write sort of quirkier stuff that I was like, oh man, I would have loved to have kind of worked in a little more of that, but sometimes when you're just so focused on news of the day, it's hard to. I got to read a lot of your buddy Chris Jones from the CBC, who
I loved his final piece on the men's hockey and Crosby. And
yeah, I mean, like if you're if you're in this media game like we have been for a while, like Chris Jones needs no introduction, but for those who don't, he's won multiple national magazine awards, worked for some of the biggest publications and magazines for years. Just an amazing reporter. And you've known him since college, and I introduced myself as a friend of Tyson Alger, and he couldn't have been nicer. And we had multiple long talks because we saw each other at different events. But like, I just loved reading what's his take on a quote unquote game story.
Yeah, right.
So I really appreciated reading that stuff because I didn't. It doesn't feel as quote unquote competitive as a beat where everyone's around the same story for months. But there is a real, hey, I can learn from this.
Yeah,
I take anyway.
How did this guy assemble this dish with the same ingredients?
100%, yeah. So, and that, at NBC, we're really lucky because we get a lot of great ingredients in that metaphor where there's just so many different people who, whether like the camera guys who, were producing for Today's Show, who would say, hey, come stand next to me in the mix zone and grab quotes with us. You can ask questions too. Like, that was really amazing to have teammates who were always super welcoming. Like, honestly, just being like, hey, because where we were sitting in the mix zone, athletes would walk through for interviews post game, TV partners first, and then the writers, the kind of written press. And so, where most of the time the NBC people that I was dealing with, they were some of the first TV outlets. So they'd get the athletes right as they came off. And so you get some of those first quotes, like before they'd gone through 20 different interactions. And I was really appreciated to be able to kind of just stick my video in there and kind of be able to ask people right as they're coming off.
Which late 30-year-old had the best salt and pepper hair in Milan, you or Sidney Crosby?
Probably Sid. I think he's probably got just about everything on me, so I'd probably go with him. I had a generally better time, I think, in Milan than he did, but he also left with a silver medal, so that's not too bad.
Yeah. Okay, so you're back in LA now. The Summer Olympics are coming up in 2 years. I imagine that's probably going to be a focus of yours over the next period. But like, how is the Summer Olympics different from you? Because you are a former college track athlete. Like, that's kind of what you're an expert in. Like which one do you enjoy more? The one where you're kind of like the fish out of water and you get to kind of explore these things with wide eyes, or do you like kind of like the summer stuff where you kind of know the odds and ends of track coverage?
I'd probably have to go with the summer games only because I just know on a deeper level so much more about more of the sports.
Right.
And so, and for that, what I really mean is like I know more of the stories, like what could be compelling about track in 2028. Well, I already have a head start thinking about that kind of stuff. And so probably that, because I go into it less of a fish out of water. Which is helpful. Obviously, you want to be informed. The way that in the lead up to the Winter Games, there's so much football and there's so much NBA, and that it's hard sometimes to focus solely on what are the purely greatest stories that we could attack in Milan. So having a head start there, I think, will help. I'll be really curious though. Like, people complained about how spread out these games were in Milan, but geographically the LA games are going to be tighter, but also it's going to be spread out, and it was really easy to get around to the venues in Milan on public transportation. They were about 40 minutes outside of the city center, each of them, in different corners of the city. But once you were on public transport, it's pretty easy to get there, and I think that's the number one thing people are wondering about with the LA games. Is like, how do we, what's that trip going to be from seeing rowing in Long Beach to, basketball in Inglewood or what have you? So that's going to be the major test, and it'll be a huge storyline for the next 2 years of just what is the experience going to be like getting around.
Does NBC need somebody to cover the squash for them this Olympics? First time coming up?
Squash is being held on the NBC campus, the Universal Studios campus. So, that's where I work. That's where my office is. So, if you come and cover that, you'll basically
like,
be.
I really feel like squash can become the curling of the summer games. Just kind of the what the hell is this on my TV? Why is it? And then why not have a mid-range talented reporter who knows this one?
I think that that's a wonderful idea. I think you should definitely throw your hat in the ring.
Okay, so I got two last things for you. One, best meal when you were in Italy.
There were some contenders. I mean, okay, I asked Michaela Schifrin, what if you have a. I said, you can ski on one mountain for the rest of your life. Where and why? And she was like, can't do it. Can't do it. I'm sorry. I'm drawing a boundary. Won't do it. Can't do it. Too hard. That's what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to say, I can't do it. I'm drawing a boundary. I will say, I had one day off, so I took a day trip out to Venice with a colleague, and we had the kind of typical Venetian called cicchetti, which is like these small, people liken it to tapas, but it's like, imagine like a cut of like a sourdough loaf, and they put fresh seafood on top, and you just order 5 or 6. You pile up your plate, and you eat it right there at the bar, or you take it outside, and it's just wonderful. It's super informal. You eat it in 10 minutes, you're gone. You walk. That was an experience that I loved. In Venice itself, we went to a place that had amazing Roman food, so I had an incredible cacio e pepe, and then we went to a place that had it was really good, kind of low key. It felt like a really small establishment, and they had this incredible ravioli with pumpkin and herbs. And listen, I mean, I ate well for the whole time, but those places probably speak to me the most. I mean, it's a great place to do marathon training, which I was doing while I was there, because I was going
to ask, how much mileage did you put up while you were there?
It was just carbs all day. I mean, I don't know, 3 weeks I probably did 180 miles. But like, and there were great canals that were wonderful to run down. That was pretty cool.
Did you get to run on like the old Monza track?
A colleague who grew up in Milan took me. He had a car one day. We went out on a Saturday or a Sunday out to Monza, which is like a royal park, where it used to belong to the royal ruling family in, I think, the 1800s, he said. And so, yeah, Monza is connected to it, which I know very well as someone who watched F1, the movie, on the flight over. And I was like, oh, that's where that guy crashed. Yeah. So at one point, it was a long run, so I'm just like kind of running around, like finding different areas to run, and I found myself in this like banked turn, and I'm like, is this part of the actual track? And I'm like, I don't think so, but there are cars screaming by, because I guess they open up the Monza track, the real one, to like amateurs on the weekends at like 10 a.m. So you hear people just screaming by, and I wasn't quite sure. It looked like it was defunct, like an older part of the track. Yeah. But I just wasn't totally sure, so I kind of scampered back as quickly as I could out of that bank turn. But that was a really cool place, because you could see the mountains. And my colleague, Matteo, who was like, oh, that's Switzerland, by the way. And I was like, really? So it was just pretty cool to see all these different parts of the world, and just feel like, I feel like I know that city really well now. And that's a cool thing that travel gives us, where you can be there for a certain amount of time and feel like, okay, if I went back, I know exactly how to get around on the metro system. I'd know exactly the 5 restaurants and bars to take people to, so I love that feeling.
So final question, you're gone for 3 weeks, you're back home. What do you do to make up for the fact that your lovely wife has taken care of your 4 beautiful children while you've been gallivanting around the country watching the Olympics?
It's just, I say things like, how can I help you? And you go do that. Things like that. It will not be made up in 1 week. It'll be made up little by little over the course of a year. Yeah. So you make up that time incrementally, but it's very good to be back, for sure. It was really fun, and I'm already looking forward to future games in 28. But it's a big commitment. So, but then I have I met colleagues out there who I'd say, "Oh, what are you doing next?" And they'd say, "Oh, I'm going to, China for 2 straight weeks or 3 weeks,"
Yeah.
because there's news there. So you realize that there are some true, like in this game, some real road dogs who don't get the spotlight. They're behind the camera. They're shooting. They're pointing and shooting. Who do this stuff for real for long stretches. So it gives you an immense amount of respect for the producers and camera operators and sound guys who don't get the limelight but are on the road all the time.
There's something about like, and I've already talked to you about like the FOMO of the Instagram stories, as like about 80 people that you follow on it are all covering the Olympics. But there's something about like watching you guys all out there while being in like a Dana Altman press conference. I was like, this is about as dry America as you can get, and then you're getting like the array of. Looks like y'all had a fun time. I'll see you in LA in a couple of years.
Yeah, well, you just book a trip to Italy, and I'll pass along every single recommendation I can for 2 very specific cities.
The problem is I need to get to Italy with an expense report. Like that's what I'm chasing.
It really is. I will say it's extremely fortunate to have been able to do that, and yeah, you don't get opportunities like that very often. So and you meet people who, oh, I covered the '88 Olympics for NBC. I covered the '94, '96, and I'm like, that's amazing. So yeah, it's pretty cool to think about kind of the longevity it has.
When's the next time we'll see you in a hockey rink?
Oh gosh, I've been meaning to like take one of my kids to like a Ducks or Kings game down here.
Don't go to a Ducks game. Like that stadium sucks. Like go to a Kings game. Yeah.
Okay. So which team's better right now?
God, boy,
I don't think the Kings aren't very good right now. I think, right?
Yeah,
They're going through some turmoil.
I haven't been following a whole bunch, so
yeah.
I just know we did. The Anaheim Stadium is where the NCAA tournament Elite Eight was that was Krzyzewski versus Dylan Brooks. Like I have good memories of that place, but also it's not. I don't think a great place to watch a hockey game. But
I'll make sure they go to their first experience is like a Seattle game.
Yeah,
how about
exactly.
That was my first NHL game experience.
Well, Andrew, glad you're back. Glad you had a good time. Also, do you want to plug your book? I know it's like months ago, but like,
hey, I'm happy to sell a copy. Beyond Fast, it's still everywhere. You can buy it anywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Like it's about to be track season.
It's about to be track season.
This is that time when if you know someone, a young athlete or a coach who kind of has a little bit of ambition and how can I take this to the next level, then we got a pretty good story. And it's pretty cool because you even still see some of the main quote-unquote characters, like they're real people, but who were in that book. Nico Young, Colin Salmon, like they're still running amazing times. And so you can really point to it and say, like, this wasn't just because they were, really good, super developed at like 16 or 17. Like the longevity, the proof is in the pudding. And I really think that Sean Brosnan, the coach who we worked on it with, I think the way he coaches is bar none, just like a great way to coach running, because of the way you've seen it. So, yeah, if you know someone who wants to get into coaching or running or kind of it's helped my running. It's absolutely helped my running. So I'd be curious to know how it will help people who actually have talent.
Dude, my wife and I went to Dick's Sporting Goods today because I needed to buy some new squash shoes, and you walk in the doors and you have to go through like those turnstile things because like they want to make it feel like you're going to the stadium, and they have this lady there who's working, and she's like, hey, like how can you help you? And I was just like, oh, I'm just going back to the shoes. And she's like, okay, and then she gets on her radio and radios over to the shoe guy. We got 2 athletes heading your way, and it's just like.
Customer relations. We all got to do it.
Made me feel good. And yeah. All right, Andrew. Well, thanks for taking the time today. And we'll have you back on here in like 2 years or so. Like we'll just kind of whenever like the next ray gun thing happens or the next time a hockey team pisses off half the country, you're our guy for that. So.
I feel very glad to say I'm probably one of the few humans on this planet in the last couple years who've been. I can say I've been to the U.S. women's gold hockey game, the amazing gold medal hockey game. Been at the men's 100-meter final when Noah Lyles won by like a few thousandths of a second. Pretty dramatic. Saw a ray gun. I was at that performance. Was it Game 7 of the NBA Finals last year? Like, I don't know if there's many people who've hit that Mount Rushmore in the last 2 years.
That Mount Rushmore is like that dragon meme where like three of them look really fierce, and then the other one has like its tongue out and eyes popping. But
yeah, but the rule holds. I'm very fortunate to be at some really cool things. So very glad that people watched our videos we did out there. We didn't just write. We did videos, Tyson, and kind of consumed.
You learned a lot from that first Facebook Live we did in the Cast Center with whoever. Anyways, just a few.
Yeah, you get your reps in when no one's watching. That's the important part. So I'm glad to have done that with you. And now it really looks polished. So thank you.
All right, Andrew Greif. Go read him at NBC News. Check out his book Beyond Fast. And thanks again, man.
Okay, thank you.